Hey all, Michael, Black Snow Comics here. Today we're going to talk about the month of November and my year-long daily drawing challenge. It's starting to get cold, it's starting to get rainy, so we know the year's coming to a close. Only 1 month left after this, but let's look back at the month that was and what I drew. And as always, I invite you to visit blacksnowcomics.com. You can go to the 2019 Daily Drawing Gallery. That's what I'm going to be looking at. You can follow along with the video if you want to see this in a bigger, higher quality than just seeing it on a small portion of your screen. So with that, let's take a look. So we're going to start the month with a Day of the Dead drawing, Dia de los Muertos. If you're not familiar, it's a Mexican holiday. You probably saw it in Coco. It's a holiday I've always been very interested in. I really like the art style of the whole thing. It's been kind of cool to see it rise in popularity because then you see more of the art coming out. So it's something I definitely wanted to kind of celebrate and draw this year. So this is La Catrina. This is a woman wearing the makeup of La Catrina. And I don't draw a ton of women usually, or a lot of beauty type of things. So I wanted to do that a little more. Not a ton more, but a little, and kind of challenge myself, draw something pretty. And I do really like the way this one turned out. I think it's kind of beautiful in a way. It's one of my my screensavers are one of my backgrounds for my phone right now. And follow that up with an interpretation of a candy skull as it loads very slowly here. Candy skulls are one of the most prominent things for a Day of the Dead that you see. It's where they paint skulls, or they actually make them sugar skulls. I wanted to do something a little different. If it ever loads, you'll see. But what I wanted to do here was take kind of a more realistic skeleton and skull and paint that versus a more stylized skull. And usually you see it on the skull itself. You don't see it painted on the whole skeleton, which I did a little of here. And it's got kind of traditional, colorful trimmings around it. Next, we're going to take a look at these characters from Over the Garden Wall. It was a Cartoon Network miniseries a few years back. My daughter just loves it and watches it every year we watch it together. I think it's a really fun kind of fall thing to watch together. And I love the style of the characters, so I drew that and tried to add a little of my own spin on them. I think it turned out pretty cool. It's a very fun, self-contained mini-series if you've never seen it. It's full of kind of interesting mystery and cool things, so I'd recommend it. Then this one that's loading here is Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. And if you have no idea what that is, it probably sounds pretty weird, and in truth, it is pretty weird. It's a small comic from SLG, and kind of my connection with the comic is the artist and the publishing company are from my hometown of San Jose, California, and I thought that was pretty cool when I found out, and that was something that was one of the first things where I was like, wow, someone from where I am went on to do something cool. So I wanted to kind of pay tribute to that. And if you've never seen it, it's a very violent, crazy comic. It's the same guy who made Invader Zim, and it's a similar art style, which I love that kind of art style. And I like the way this one turned out. I think it looks pretty cool here. And again, I try to keep his style, but also bring something of my own to it. And then after that, I kind of had that art style in my head, but I wanted to do something else with it. And of course I've drawn Mario a couple times at this point, but always differently. And this time I wanted to do something like really different with them and kind of reimagine Mario and Luigi. And I really like the big, round, pupilless eyes. That's something that I've always kind of played with. If you read my optimistically cynical comic, it's something that I've done with those characters fairly regularly. So here I wanted to make Luigi like extra lanky and make Mario really bulky and make him look kind of super aggro, and then Luigi's a little more confused, kind of playing up kind of his his kind of dopiness. And I like the way it turned out. I think it's pretty cool. I'd like to do it again, maybe get something a little more fluid out of it, but I think it was pretty cool. And then we have a portrait of Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. And I really like punk music. I've liked punk music since, I guess, middle school, which was in the mid to late 90s, which punk had a pretty big comeback. Skate punk was the thing. Everyone was skaters, and I got pretty into the whole thing. I got to see Johnny Rotten perform quite a few years back at a show. There was a big show called Inland Invasion in Southern California, and it was really cool, even though, of course, obviously he's pretty old at this point. It was really cool to see him because he was still like a great showman. He stole the show. He had much more presence than anyone else on the show, and it was like a big show with like 20 bands or something, and he was the closer, so that was pretty awesome. And then while I had kind of punk on my mind, I really like the band Social Distortion, and one of the cool things is this skeleton, the Skelly logo that they have that I've always really liked. And if you read my daily blog, you'll hear some of this stuff like in way more detail, but I used to have a really cool hat with this on it that I really liked that I regret not having anymore, but I wanted to kind of reimagine and update the skeleton, so I drew him kind of doing his dancing with his martini and his cigarette, and tried to draw him a little more detailed and with my own style to it. And then this was a leftover idea I had from Halloween that I thought was pretty funny and ended up being fairly popular, so I guess people agreed. But Bojack Horseman, simple wordplay, Headless Horseman, they're pretty much the two only things that you hear of that have a horseman in them, so I thought it'd be funny to have a Headless Bojack Horseman. So here you go, he's just chilling on his couch with his beer and chips, but no head. And then for the pumpkin, I made the jack-o'-lantern have kind of an homage to him. Then I followed that up with Chris Jericho, and as he kind of appears now in AEW Le Champion, a little bit of the bubbly. Of course, I'm a really big wrestling fan. I'm pretty much a WWE guy, but I was very excited with AEW here. Actually, I've expanded a lot in the last year because I watch AEW. Sometimes I watch MLW. I've been enjoying NWA Power. I catch a little bit of ROH and New Japan, and I started watching Impact a little more recently. So I guess I like everything. The one I follow most closely is WWE and NXT in particular, but AEW is having a big pay-per-view, and I believe also it's Chris Jericho's birthday, which I didn't know when I was drawing it, but I thought I'd draw that. I thought it was cool. I've always been a Jericho fan since he debuted in the WWF way back when, and then I've gone back and watched his earlier stuff since then. Okay, so this is kind of a sad one. I got really, really sick right after this. Like, super sick. More sick than I've been in a long time. I haven't thrown up in a long, long time, like 16 years. But I got some kind of stomach thing, flu thing that wiped me out bad. And I was just throwing up constantly to where, like, I couldn't sit up. I couldn't drink anything. I was getting dehydrated. It was a horrible, horrible day. It was a nightmare. And I actually didn't get to draw anything that day. So if we're going to be, like, very strict with it, I kind of screwed up the challenge. It was because I'm supposed to draw something every day, right? Well, I think I did the best I could. At one point, I asked my wife if she could bring me my drawing supplies, and she kind of looked at me like I was an idiot, because I guess I kind of was, and she said, like, you're dying, you can't even move, how are you going to draw something today? So she had a valid point. I was really, like, upset. I was so weak and upset with everything that kind of embarrassing, but I teared up because I really wanted to be able to do my daily drawing, which is kind of silly. So this is what I made up the next day. The next day I was still moving real slow, but I wasn't throwing up anymore. So I was able to get my drawing board and my pens and paper and stuff. So first I drew this skull, and it's kind of like a screaming skull. I really like skulls. They're cool. They're fun to draw, and I actually really like the way this one turned out, particularly with the shadowing underneath. And then instead of just making it like a plain skull, I gave it eyeballs, which of course your skull doesn't usually have eyeballs left in it. But I love the way it looks. I think this is pretty cool. This could be like a cool logo or something. You could put fire around it, whatever. But I might do something with it in the future just because I like it so much. So I, the same day, since I was making it up, I followed that up with another sick theme, and I went with this marker drawing of a plague doctor. And this is something that seems like it's become more well known in recent years, but it wasn't that long ago where I had never even like heard of this whole thing. It's such a weird concept that, like, just imagine like a medical man dressing this way with this long bizarre beak and covered in it's just so weird to picture that this was actually a thing at some point. If you're not familiar, it's with the Black Plague, and this was supposed to keep them from breathing the same air as kind of their patients, and sometimes they'd stuff stuff up in the beak thing to make it smell nice and stuff. It's an awesome design, very bizarre. Followed that up with Steve Buscemi. I've always liked him since I was a little kid, and I saw him in Pete and Pete as Ellen's dad. I've seen him in a million things at this point, and it was really cool to see him kind of rise to prominence with Boardwalk Empire and see people appreciate him. One thing I love about him is he's got an inherent sadness to his face, and I wanted to capture that here and enhance it a little with a little blue shadowing and stuff. One thing I've been working on a little bit is my coloring. Followed that up with CM Punk, who shocked everyone by coming back to WWE, kind of. I guess he works for Fox, but he's on a WWE show, but he's just talking at this point. But I was a huge fan. Cool to see him back. Hope to see him in a more interesting capacity. It is cool to hear him speak and stuff, but I'd like to see him get back in the ring or get involved with stories or something. And there's a million different types of poses. I like this one though, because he just looks like, look at him, come on. And then for whatever reason, I guess because it was starting to get cold, maybe I was thinking of a more tropical place, and I really like tiki art and that whole kind of stuff. So I was thinking about the tiki room at Disneyland, and I want to draw one of the birds there. I like parrots a lot. Although I've never owned one. I don't really love birds as like pets, but I think they're cool. Although it is one of the animals that I find kind of scary at the same time. Like if one was flying around my house, it'd freak me out. So I drew Jose. Why Jose? Because he's the most colorful. I just wanted to draw something like bright and colorful and fun. I wanted to just draw my own take on it. And I think it turned out pretty cool. Looks pretty good. So while I was in a tiki mood, I decided to just draw my own tiki mask. Something I've done a couple times in the past, and if you see my blog, I compared it to an older drawing I did, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. And one of the things I like to do is throw flames behind the tikis. I think it looks pretty cool, and I like how colorful this one turned out. I really want to play around with painted wood texture, and I think it looks pretty cool. This is something like I'd wear on a shirt or something. I might print it and add it to my very small tiki art wall. While I was still in that tropical mood and still had in mind that I don't draw a lot of women, I decided to try to draw a Polynesian woman. Wanted to draw one that showed beauty and attractiveness, since that's not something I usually focus on, and I like the way it turned out. I think it looks pretty good. The flowers look nice too, and I think she looks pretty. And then, well, I still kind of had that in my mind. I did a shrunken head. I know it's not the... It's all part of that mysterious tropical thing that used to be more prominent, where we had things like the unknown in deepest, darkest Africa, like in your mind that there's the world's full of mysteries and there's all these things out there, kind of in a childlike way. So I wanted to capture that and draw something here. So I drew a shrunken head, and again I compared it to some shrunken heads I drew in the past. This is much more detailed and realistic though, and I still went a lot colorful with it with the highlights and shadowing, just to add something to it. I think it looks pretty cool. And now for something completely different. I guess I was done with the tropical thing, even though I could have come up with a bunch more. But I wanted to pay tribute to one of my favorite comedic actors. This is Don Knotts, and he's Barney Fife here. One of the things I loved watching with my family when I was younger was all these reruns of Andy Griffith's show. It's still really funny. After I drew this, I watched a few episodes and it still had me cracking up. Like, it's good, wholesome, funny humor. And Don Knotts was the show stealer there. And pretty much anything he was in, he was hilarious. He's so good. And I wanted to get him here trying to look cool and tough, even though, like, you know, he's the wimpiest of cops. And then this was one was kind of left over from Halloween, I think, where I wanted to draw Medieval. So this is Sir Dan. Medieval's a old PlayStation game. There's a couple of them. And it was about an undead knight coming back. And so here he is. One of the things you can do is pop your head off and go on a hand to go into like small areas, and so it's like a special move. And so this was based off a statue I saw someone made of that, or a 3D print or something. So I thought this looked pretty cool. Like those games a lot back in the day. I heard it recently got remastered. I don't have a PS4, so I don't have it, but I do have the original games. And then while I was thinking about games, this is something I just thought of at some point and decided to do. This is Nestor. Nestor was from Nintendo Power. They had comics where one of the Nintendo guys, Howard Phillips, would teach Nestor like tips on the games, and they're pretty funny. Like, I liked him as a kid. I thought Nestor was cool. He was kind of an unofficial mascot of the NES era. Eventually he did actually get like a game, but it was on the Virtual Boy as a bowling game, so it's kind of funny. I think he might have had a couple other cameos, but this is like my reimagining of Nestor now. It's this kind of lanky dude here. So I still have video games on the brain, I guess, and one of my favorite games is Yoshi's Island for the Super Nintendo, and one of my favorite things about it was some of the crazy bosses. It's like a frog that eats you and you fight inside his stomach. That's just so inventive and fun. One of my favorite bosses was Raphael the Raven here, and one of the things about him, besides like his fun design, he started out as a regular bad guy. This is what they do for the bad guys in that game, and then Kamek, the Magic Koopa, does magic on them, and they increase in size to be bosses. And I love that concept of taking a normal enemy and making them boss worthy, and that's what they did here. And you see he's in outer space and he's on a very small planet, and this kind of blew my mind as a kid. You fight him on this tiny planet that you could rotate all around, and it's a pretty simple fight, really. Like, you try to get him to stand on the opposite side of one of these kind of posts, then you ground pound it and pop it out to hurt him. And it's not the toughest fight, but visually, like, I just loved it. And while I was thinking about Yoshi's Island, I started playing New Yoshi's Island for the 3DS, because I had it and I realized I had only got to the second world. It was a Father's Day gift from a few years back, so I actually beat it now since then. But I started playing it and I was thinking about Shy Guys. And Shy Guys are one of the coolest, weirdest enemies in the whole Mario world. And one of the things I loved about Yoshi's Island is it took this kind of weird, obscure side enemy and it made it their primary enemy, kind of like Goombas or Koopa Troopas have been for Mario in the past. And they made all these varieties of them, and I really like that. There's all these variations, so I wanted to capture some of those here. So we got like a standard one, we got one that hides in the flowers, we have one that's on fire, a flying one, a fat one on stilts, a tall one, a ghost one, a jungle dancing one. And this one, at first I didn't know if these were actually Shy Guys, but I looked into it, and canonically Sniffets are Shy Guys wearing special masks that allow them to shoot bullets, I guess. So I threw a Sniffet in there. And my kids adore this one. I think I might have to get this printed large and hang it up, because I really like it too, but this was one of the ones where my kids were like, "You drew that?" So it's always nice when you can get that kind of reaction. And then this was kind of a leftover from when I was doing some of that, what did I call it? Tropical stuff. Voodoo kind of falls into that same realm of like the unknown, and so I decided to draw like a voodoo guy here. And I wanted to go back to something that I've done sporadically throughout the year. Something that I've always really liked is drawing just where light would be hitting, so it's mostly in shadow. And in this case, it's highlighting his skull makeup and some of the details of his top hat and feathering, and the skeleton stuff painted on his chest or shirt. And of course I love black and white. That's kind of my thing. So I wanted to stick with something like that. And I like the way this turned out a lot. My wife was pretty impressed with this one. This is something I could see being on like an album or a poster or a t-shirt or something. It's really cool. And then now that we're kind of winding down in the year, I was thinking, well, there's some stuff I love that I haven't drawn that'd be kind of fun to draw and like show my fandom. So I decided to do X-Files, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I wanted to play with the lighting and stuff. The picture I based it on had a lot of accent lighting and kind of light shades of blue, so I worked that in there. I'm a huge X-Files fan. It's maybe my favorite show of all time. It's one of the ones I go back and rewatch on the regular. I loved it since it was new. I used to gather with my family and watch it, and we discuss it afterwards. It's one of the first shows that I think really brought my extended family together as appointment viewing and something we could talk about. So that was kind of special to me. I didn't stick with it through the whole thing. Once Mulder was gone, I kind of lost interest and came back for the last season since I knew it was ending. I did a couple of years ago go back and watch the entire thing in order for the first time, and it's not that bad actually. I mean, it drops in quality, but it's worth watching. But like the first half of the show, I contend is some of the greatest television you'll ever see. Then for whatever reason, I drew King Kong, and this is based on kind of the current version of King Kong, the one that's going to be in the Godzilla movie and had Samuel L. Jackson in it. And I wanted to get him like really roaring. And one of the things I wanted to do here was focus just on a very limited color palette. So there's just varying shades of brown almost entirely, except for the mouth. And I thought that was a way to kind of highlight and draw your eye, because I was kind of playing with these kind of principles, because I've never, like I said, I'm a black and white guy, so color I'm still learning and getting better at. I think it looked pretty cool. Then it was my daughter's birthday, my youngest. So I wanted to draw her, and I took a couple pictures of her that day to try to base one on. And one of the ones I loved was just when I got her smiling and like squinting and really showing her big cheeks and everything, and she's just so cute and adorable. So I wanted to draw something for her, and I really like the way it turned out. She's a cutie pie. And then I don't know why, but I followed up with Jack the Ripper, something I've drew once before, and again on my blog I compared the old picture to this one, and same kind of thing where I wanted to have it really steeped in shadow, since he's such a mysterious figure, so little's known. But this is pretty much the idea of how he looked that everyone seems to have, and instead of black and white, I wanted to do it in a bright red, since there's so much murder and blood associated. So I thought that looks pretty cool, though. Looks creepy. And why Jack the Ripper? Because it's fascinating. Just is. So then the next day was my older daughter's birthday. They're only 2 days apart. And it's kind of funny. The birthdays are so rampant. Like, her best friend has the same birthday. My dad's girlfriend and her twin sisters have the same birthday. My brother-in-law has the day between my daughters. Our neighbor has the same birthday as my other daughter. So it's kind of weird. There's all these birthdays around the same time. But this is my older, and she's just the sweetest, kindest, cutest, most happy girl, and I wanted to get her here, so I found a nice picture of her to base it off of. And I kind of had to do that a little ahead of time because I was traveling for the holidays, so I brought some of my drawing stuff with me so I'd be able to continue the challenge while I was out of town, because that was actually Thanksgiving, was my daughter's birthday. So then Black Friday, I had my my pens and papers with me, and this just kind of popped into my head. I haven't done a lot of like humor stuff or things with message. Well, I guess I've done some humor stuff, like humor that comes straight from my mind, and like messages or symbols or statements or things. It's something that I like, but I don't have a ton of success with, because it seems like usually when I try to come up with some kind of like symbolism to send a message, it's lost on people for whatever reason. So this one I thought was pretty obvious, though. Black Friday, people are going and dumping money into the giant's mouth. Consumerism, it's a wordplay thing, but it's also like a commentary on Black Friday and the wastefulness. One of the things I've always kind of struggled with is, like, growing up and as I got older, I really didn't like materialism, but at the same time I struggle with it because in some ways I do. Like, it's fun to collect things. I have my retro games that I collect. As you can see from like a lot of my drawings, there's stuff that I've kept. I don't know. It's something I've always gone back and forth with. I never wanted to be the type to become reliant on money for happiness and fall into a trap of not being able to be creative and do things I want to do because I'm just so concerned about money. But it's such a hard thing to do, especially when you start a family and you feel this responsibility to become kind of the breadwinner, and you really want to be the provider and do a good job. You want your kids to have everything you never had. And this is getting a little deeper than I meant to. But anyway, yeah, it's just a fun drawing. We don't need to get more into that, I guess. And then after that, I had another similar idea, but I didn't love it. It was going to be kind of a wanted poster that involved symbolism and stuff, but I didn't really feel like doing it at the time. Just wanted something kind of more fun and lighthearted. my baby was pretty sick at the time, so I just wanted something I could kind of bust out. And one of the things I was watching with my older daughter was a video of favorite Zelda villains. It's one of the things that's been really cool this year is my daughter's kind of fallen in love with Zelda, so it's something that we can play together and discuss and share. It's kind of fun. And one of the things in this video that was cool is not only they picked like a favorite enemy type, but also which iteration was their favorite. So one of the ones that he liked was the Moblins from Wind Waker. And I was thinking about it, when I saw it, I just wanted to draw it. And Wind Waker is kind of a special game to me because up till that point, I wasn't really into Zelda. I had it for the NES, and I had the second one. But like a lot of my NES games, it was one that I couldn't get that into. Like I'd play it and it was hard. I didn't really know what to do. I'd pop it in for like 10 minutes, get frustrated, then go play Mario. By the time the Super Nintendo one came out, I never got that one. I played it at friends' houses a little bit. But Zelda games are not the type of games that you could just like pop in and play really well. Same thing with the Nintendo 64 era. I had a friend who had Ocarina of Time, and I'd watch him play a little bit, and I thought it was cool, and I would try it. But it's the type of game where it's so involved that if you're just popping into it and you're not super familiar with it, it's really hard to acclimate yourself. Like even just the controls would throw me off. But like, what are you trying to do? You really need to like sit down and play through. So none of those really connected with me. I used to be kind of confused why people liked Zelda so much. I was like, well, it's all about Mario. What are these fools thinking? Then the Wind Waker came, and I loved the GameCube. I loved so many games on it. It was one of my favorite systems. And when I saw Wind Waker coming, I know a lot of people were really turned off by those cartoon graphics. But for me, that's what really sold me on it, where I was like, I gotta have this game. This looks like the Zelda game for me. I love cartoon style graphics in games. I think the more cartoony they look and the more they're able to capture that feel, the better. I loved how expressive Link looked. I loved the character redesigns. So that was enough to initially kind of draw me in, and then once that kind of hooked me, also, I think the game is maybe a little more linear than some of those older games that kind of just threw you out there to solve puzzles. So I think that helped me too. But that's probably the Zelda game I've played the most over and over. I've beaten it quite a few times. And since that game, I've played every Zelda game that's come out and loved them all. And I've gone back and played some of the older ones and gotten better at them too and enjoyed them more too. So for me, Wind Waker is a special game. And the Moblins have so much personality. They're so fun. So I wanted to draw that. So that was it for the month. These are I'll discuss them in December, I guess. So that was it. I had a lot of fun this month. It's a little sad to think that it's winding down, but I'm not going to stop drawing or anything. I'll keep drawing next year regardless. I don't know that I'll be outputting things like at a daily pace, but one of the things I probably will do with some of the art print stuff is I'll take my time more on it and get more detailed and be able to add more things to it and spend a little more time on concept. So I think that'll result in maybe better art overall. And I'll also go back to my comic books and stuff. I'll go back to Paranormal Pinkerton and I'll finish issue 1 of that I've got. I'm about a third of the way through that, but I haven't worked on it in a long time, but I'd love to get back to that. And just this weekend, I started drawing Optimistically Cynical again. So I've gotten back to my my comic strip, and I've just been working on that while I do this now. I've already got them drawn for the rest of the month. They're going to come out every Sunday, and I plan to continue that indefinitely. I have a bunch of ideas that have been floating around in my head for a long time with it. I've wanted to get back to it. It was just hard because I knew I had this commitment as well. So, and I've been actually doing a little more drawing on the side too. I've been drawing a lot and enjoying it, and I've gotten a lot faster at it. I feel like a lot more confident with it. This challenge has really helped me kind of sharpen a lot of things, so it's been rewarding. But when it's all done, I'll do a video with my overall thoughts of the challenge and some stuff. But anyway, so we've got 1 month left. I'll try to pack it with as much cool stuff as I can, since we're limited. And that's it for now. Until next time.